Bangor's a lovely place to live, and it always has been, where I'm concerned.
It was always so colourful, and buckets and spades, and it's just what you sort of nearly imagine. And when you see the postcards, it was just like that, and people laughing. It was simple things that made people laugh and speak to each other. You know, everybody said, oh, have a great day, you know, where are you going, down to the beach? You know, it was just easier. It was just, life was so much more simple.
Back then, Bangor in the summer was humming. It was packed to the gills. I only lived around the corner of Main Street and had to bite my way home sometimes through the crowds.
It was very much a seaside town. It went very quiet over the winter time, especially along the seafront.
When the sun came out, the town just filled up, and it seemed to keep filling and filling. The first nice day of the year that coincided with a holiday, that was it. It was like the town was turned on almost. The shops all opened, the promenade, the piers were filled with people.
Things changed, obviously, dramatically in the 70s, but we were very, very lucky.
It was a great town. We didn't have a fantastic beach. The coal boats used to come in, so the sand was often blacker than sand colour. But we still enjoyed our times down on the beach.
Just throngs of people queuing at shops, queuing at the boats to get out onto the water, or just coming down to enjoy the sunshine on the pier and go for a stroll.
Back at that time, the seafront was the place to be in Bangor. You couldn't get a spot on the seawall on a good summer's evening. There was, and I'm talking about I'm not talking about the seats, I'm talking about sitting on the seawall. The seafront was alive until 2 o'clock in the morning. There'd have been queues outside Ken's chip shop at 1:30 in the morning for the fish supper. Coming out of the Queen's Court Hotel, with there been a dance on. There were good days.
It was actually magic. Do you know what? It was just magic. As kids, we went out in the morning and up to our friend's house, down to the beach at Ballyholme, maybe into Bangor. We never checked in, we just went. Nowadays you don't do that. It's not the same.
I love Bangor, it's a totally different vibe from Belfast. As I say, as you know, sectarianism was rife in those days and the Troubles were at their height, and Bangor was like a breath of fresh air. And as I got older, I knew what was behind that. Bangor was a very hedonistic place as opposed to a sectarian place. Bangorians were intent on enjoying themselves, which they did. We didn't really have that friction, that sectarian element. And actually, Laird's Boats was one of those first cross-community places before the word cross-community was invented, because there's people from different religions, different backgrounds, different strata of society. They're all working together, all having good fun, and all making, forging lifelong friendships. Bangor was a much more tolerant place, and I think as long as you had something to add to things, then you're very much accepted.
There was the boulevard, definitely, and then there was Cecil Greenwood's, where all the kids used to love to go in. He would have little toys that, balloons that you sat on that made a rather puffy cushions. Just those are really the main things.
This bay was absolutely completely open. There was nothing there at all except sea, and the waves used to come up and sweep up, and these houses over here, it was amazing to watch. The waves would have come in and splashed right up very close to them, and the spray would have went right over the top of the houses. Now, not gallons and tons of water, but there was the spray went over, and there'd have been seaweed and stuff. And as I say, on a nice windy day, and the wind was in the north, it was very dramatic. And the kids used to spend a lot of time running back and forward, trying to dodge the waves so they didn't get soaked, but they would still do that anywhere in the country, but that's what we used to do at the time.
Those were great times over the summer, and being right on the seafront, we saw the best of the weather and we saw the worst of the weather. Frequently we would have been flooded out on bad days, occasionally losing a shop window with the sea coming over the wall.
I think kids miss out nowadays. You can't do things like that.
And of course, you always remember the sunny days, never the cold, wet days.
Then there were the rowing boats. The posh people called them rowboats. Some people called them rowing boats, and to us, we were going down to the boats.
It's over 100 years of rowing boats hire in Bangor. There was 4 sites. There was Laird's, Graham Walsh, Caulfield's and Harvey and Brown. Laird's had 2 jetties, at jetty number 1, number 2, and then Graham Walsh was beside them. And then Harvey and Brown and Caulfields worked from the pier side. They're at the Harbour Master's office there.
We were down here from 9:30 in the morning to 10, 11 at night, 7 days a week. Wouldn't miss it. Raging when you had to go away for your holidays with your family, desperate to get back here because you didn't want to miss anything. And from my early years, all my teenage years, it was 7 days a week on the water with my friends.
I would say back in those days, everybody in Bangor knew how to row.
The boats actually used to be rolled down from where they were kept over the winter, down past the front of my house. The great thing that youngsters look forward to, seeing the boats being pushed down by the older employees or scouts of Laird's boats. And they used to pass by the front of my house, probably doing 15 miles an hour down a steep hill. And, you always wondered, are they going to get stopped or turned at the bottom? But they always did. Probably an awful nuisance at 11 years of age. And you just worked your way in, tried to keep out of the way when you knew you were being a nuisance, and tried to come to the fore when you could be of help. And then you ended up just as one of the scouts. This would have been around the mid-1960s. People just came and went, and one day you just didn't appear back. And I suspect that's probably how I did it. Now you didn't leave on a an unfriendly basis, you know, because you kept friends with these people for years and still to this very day.
We actually moved down to Bangor from Belfast in 1967, just before the trouble started. My father worked in law courts and he has very distinctive white hair. I was delighted because we used to take a house every summer in Bangor, and it was our holiday. So when I moved down to Bangor, I was on holiday and stayed on holiday since that. One of Eddie's friends, his son was a friend of mine, and he took both of us down to Eddie one day and said, "Eddie, could you do with another couple of hands?" And Eddie very kindly said, "Yes, of course, bring them down." So joined the kindergarten, as he called it, you know. I was involved 1970 to 70, still 78, 70 to 78, 8 years, yeah. It was a great time. My life during the summer was mapped out. That's where I was, and that's where I made a lot of lifelong friends. I still socialise with them. You know, we still go out and not say party, but we could certainly socialise together. The very same people. So it's like a wee community.
We came down here when I was about 4. My father was transferred through the RUC to Bangor, and we ended up down here. And from that, I started running about the pier, and then progressed where you sort of ventured down the slipway, you know, and everything was big and everything was, you know, and you sort of hung about until somebody noticed you. And it was about 6 or 7 then.
My earliest memories here, I have 3 older cousins who lived in Texas, and every summer they decamped to Bangor for their summer holidays. The 2 older ones were girls, and I was their ruse to get access to the scouts at Laird's. Little James likes boats, let's take him for a row, and they could go down and hang out with all the scouts, and I would be scratching around throwing stones into the tide. But it was my first exposure to the rowboats and the motorboats in Bangor Bay, but I had been very small then. Forward a couple of years, my parents owned the business in the hotel at the bottom of the North Pier, what's now known as the Salty Dog. It was the Sands back then. And out the front door was the lifeboat station, the pier, the slipway, and 20 rowboats for hire. From even when I had to be walked across the road to be let loose and return when I was hungry, that was my childhood memories of all my summer holidays.
I was delighted to be down there, but I was very aware that there's a group of older boys than me, and they scrutinised you, you know, and because everyone started to be very territorial, and these boys, they didn't know us, so they viewed us with suspicion, and we had to progress through the rite of passage, which meant several times being in the tide, as they called it. You know, for any slight or invented misdemeanor we carried out, we ended up in the tide. So that's the way it was then.
Despite my initial couple of visits to Laird's boats as a little boy, I was very much a Caulfield's scout, and that becomes ingrained into you. And there was a bit of a rivalry across the bay from the Laird scouts and the Caulfield scouts. It sometimes manifested itself in a water fight or a race, and occasionally one of our boats would get abandoned over there, one of their boats would get abandoned over here, and you would have to go into their turf. It was a little bit intimidating because the banter, as it was, to a small boy could be daunting. Swimming lessons here were not for the faint-hearted. You woke up one morning and you didn't know how to swim, and you went home that evening being able to swim, usually because one of the older boys had taking it upon himself to teach you, and teaching you to swim meant throwing you in out of your depth, and that was the standard operation here. There was no life jackets, they weren't even a thing we had then. You know, if you came out of the boat, you had to swim for shore or swim back to the boat. I can vividly remember my first swimming lesson. It's quite a shock to the system, finding out how cold the sea is when your only experience is bath water or swimming pools.
Where we are standing now, it would have been water. We would have been very low, and this would have been the old boathouse for Caulfield. And the harbour master would have been up above. That was called the watch house. Down below was called the boathouse. And this area here was the centre of Bangor. Everybody came, and there's a seat round the other side, and everybody would have sat and chatted and said what they'd done during the day and so on. And youngsters don't sit on the seat unless there was room, because they would have been chased. And it was a hive of activity, this area. The water used to come up to that wall, and this whole area completely was really, really low. Over here, where the lifeboat station is now, again, do you know, at one time you could have took a boat from, say, Laird, steamed along the water, and then you could actually go right into the long hole, which is down there, at a special tide. It only happened a very rare occasion, but they were able to do trips right through here, right through the car park, which seems a bit strange now. Right, this here is the old sea wall, and if you look, you can see metal. This has come back 200 years, and even down here, there's old bits of chain. And again, there was a big drop here, and there wasn't much in the way of boats in this particular area, but there were boats here, especially going back maybe a couple of 100 years, you know, at that time. And then this wall was very important, because all the old fishermen used to come here and sharpen their knives, and that was saved the sharpening stone. They were always sharpening there. Not only was it used out here, this part was very important. That was the overflow for the seat, which is just there, and fish was sold on the wall up until 40 years ago. And the old boatmen, if they wanted to sharpen their knives, they just came to the likes of this part and sharpened away at it. It saved them going home, and it saved them carrying tools. They just used the wall, the old sandstone. This here is the original wall as well. Now the old concrete, this part here is the original wall as well. That's a new topping, and again, vessels used to come right into here at a very high tide. There's a friend of mine on a small vessel called the Shystrom, a very, very small ship. And one time they were breaking loose and coming in, and Crawford was able to jump off the bow of the boat and actually land on the wall. That's hard to believe when we're so far away from the sea now. But this is where it all happened, was here. This would have been the old central pier there, and where Brigand's house is over there is built on the old south pier. And I would say you wouldn't know the place now at all, but that's the way it was at the time.
I was a baby, and my mother got on a boat, and I was in her arms, and then she was very nervous about the whole thing. And I don't remember, but there was a lot of talk. They shouldn't have put her on the boat. I just lived down at the boats all the time. From I was a young girl, little girl. And my brother Billy, who was a lovely big boy. And my father was quite a small man compared to my brother, who was about 6'2" or 3". He was a lovely big fella, yeah. He's gone now. With my father, they're all away. But we had great fun in the boats.
We would go down, and if we arrived and boats were available, we never had to pay for the boats. And if they were free, we were able to take them out. But we always knew if you got a wave, you had to come back in and whatever. So we would have been down on a reasonably regular basis, calling in and just saying hi, but not getting in the way. You know, it was a business, and so we were always welcome. But no, because we lived in Ballyhome, we spent most of our childhood in Ballyhome or round to Pickey, to be truthful, and popping into Grandpa Billy on the way back. And as a smaller child, we'd have definitely been into the house and out the back to see where he was working. And I mean, it was a pretty big spot. And as Jan, my sister, would say, you know, she remembers being smaller and sitting in the sawdust and, you know, the smell of the varnish, and it was very interesting. He was very talented and always very welcoming. You know, we weren't told not to be there. It was dangerous or anything. You know, it was always fine. It was lovely.
I was the youngest of 3 brothers, and the eldest one, Sydney, he's now in Canada. He went down to the boats at first, that would have been in the 50s. My next brother, Robert, he pulled him into the early 60s. Then I came toddling along in the 60s, and I was there for about 5-6 years.
Well, I started just in the 8th year down to the jetty, and we got threepence a day pay in the old money. And my love of boats started off then, because I lived in Mance Road in Bangor, and just across Mance Road was the boatyard, and I loved it. I loved the smell of the wood, and in those days there was hoof and hoof glue, hoof and bones. Smell that even stuck with me.
My granny and granddad lived in one of the big houses there in Mount Royal, which is the terrace up above Laird's Boats. You'll see the steps there, and we met up with the Burns family, and their dad ran the motorboat for Laird's, and we used to go swimming there every morning there, and then it just branched out to stay down the boats then from then. As you grew up there and you were there every year, and then you eventually, the bigger boys would move on to, you know, either they'd be going to college or getting a job, and then you would start taking their place and end up being one of the scouts. I hung around more with the old boatmen than people my own age. There, I don't know, I thought I was about 50 when I was 14. I used to stand there and nod and talk with the rest of them, you know, but I was only a kid at the time trying to pretend to be a big boatman, but eventually got there in the end. Friends, Tommy Burns there, and the Burns family, I've spent my life with that family there, and I still work with Tommy. Yeah, they'll be friends for life.
I just grew into it. There was no plan to do anything, but my granny used to live just along there slightly, and then I'd have been thrown out the door, and I would have made my way around here, and I would have played every day during the summer, and from that I just progressed. So it would just been a case that I grew into it. There was no plan. You came down that young that you didn't think like that. So it was just a place of coming out to play. There was never a time where you'd have said, I want to be here. I was just always here. I didn't want to go home.
Eddie and Jimmy, Jimmy Laird was his father and Eddie was his son. As I say, they both lived in at the bottom of Man's Road, both builders, boat builders.
Jimmy, he died in 1975, so I didn't really know him that well. I was very young, but I can remember him lining us up on the rowboats on the rack first thing in the morning to bail them out there with their wee tin cans, because there was no plastic bottles back then. So we bailed them all out, and then Horse and Rolex out, and then the bigger boys would haul them up and down the place.
And then there was Eddie Laird, Jimmy's son. He was good to work, he had a temper. He was good to work for. There was one day, there was a boat that had been left on the rocks, which happened quite a lot. And it was brought back and it was up in the rack and we were checking it for damage. And I was holding the stern up, looking underneath it, that's okay. And then I dropped the boat, but I didn't see Eddie, he was underneath it, hit him in the head. I was halfway round to the glen, still running. Eventually went back, it was okay. You just said, you skewer, you, is what he called you. But, loved it, good time.
I grew up then basically with Eddie Laird, and I started to show more and more of an interest where I would go up to the Man's Road and help get the boats sorted out. The weekends there when I'm off school, and start doing some woodwork with him. He'd teach me a few bits and pieces. I just spread out from there till I ended up doing quite a bit of work for him. He would tell me whether I was a steamer or a po head, if I'd done something wrong. Or more brains than a lollipop was another one of his expressions. If I'd done something wrong there, but most of the time it was pretty good.
I was with Caulfield's. Well, Caulfield's boats had changed hands. Brian Maharg bought them from Billy Caulfield, and then laterally Kyle from Brian. My first season maybe on the slipway would have been still with Brian owning the boats, and then the last few seasons with Kyle.
This was our home for the summer. My granny just lived over there, came down at a very early age. There were words, which is totally confused now, there was words like scouts.
Scouts were, you looked after their own boats, launched them, hired them out to people, took the money. Working day, there when I was head scout, you had the keys for the jetty, the 2 huts. You went down 9 o'clock, opened the huts up, got the boards out there for today's hires and stuff, and then you would, some of the other scouts would come down. You would launch maybe half a dozen boats, maybe 10, and you put them out at anchor, and then you just wait for your customers to arrive.
On a sunny day, Bangor would fill up very quickly. People would make their way to the seafront to catch some sunshine on the North Pier, which was a great sun trap. And the rowboats, quite often the queue would back up to the top of the slip and across the car park. We would come down in the morning, open the boats were kept in the old harbour master's office in the boat shed underneath, open up, pull the boats off the racks and put them on the trucks and wheel them to the slipway and line them up on the slipway. And as the customers started to arrive, we would launch the boats for them, bring them into the jetty, help the customers in, take the money off them, push them out and watch them. Some of them could row, some of them couldn't, but they were going to find out how. It's a crash course in rowing.
Jimmy Laird, he was a man that never laughed. He let a half-baked smile off and stared at you with these piercing blue eyes. Anyway, if he knew you had an interest, he would take an interest in you. And this day he was repairing an oar that had got broken, putting a scarf in it. It's a way of joining two broken bits together. And he'd done the glue the night before and it was set. But he was rubbing the oar with his hand. And these shavings were coming up in there. I said, he's a magician. I said, how do you do that? It was a little palm plane he had in his hand. I didn't see that. I was only about 8 or 9. And he showed me how to do it. That was my first venture into shipwriting.
This is my little workshop there, which I do most of my woodwork and boat repairs in there. So it's just a bit of some of my equipment. A lot of planes, as you can see, a lot of hand planes. These planes are original Jimmy Laird planes. And Eddie Laird there, he built the rowing boats. I was lucky enough to get these from Ronnie Strain. This is a spar plane for making spars there for masts, for smaller boats there, or making the oars for the rowing boats. And a wee smaller one there just to find it. There, so I was lucky enough to have these and I've got them back up working order again. This is actually the start of a boat. So it is. This is a new build. This will be a 10-foot sailing dinghy. This is a roca, marine ply for keel box. It's all the bits of that boat are lying here, there and everywhere at the minute there till I get started at it. It's just my wee bench there for doing smaller stuff. And then of course I've got bigger benches there I take outside there if I'm doing anything big. There 14-foot length planks or anything like that. That's the rudder for the Ballyhome insect there, so it is. It's the original rudder for it there, but it will not be going back on again. There'll be a newer form of one going on to that. These wee small bits here are actually the planking for the deck on that there, which will be, I'm going to put Douglas fir on it there, but they're all cut out and ready to go onto that there, which is my next job. This is my current restoration. It's a Ballyhome insect. It's about 75-year-old. It was built in the early 50s. I got this off Norman Henry, gave it to me there on the condition I restored it. So yes, that's what I've been busy doing there the last couple of years, restoring this one. New sternboard, really, top part of the sternboard's new, and a new keel on it as well. So there's quite a bit of work that's gone into this one. She'll probably be stronger than what she was when she was originally built, I would think. So labour of love. This is a Laird's punt, number 7 here. This is the big boat there. This take up to 5 persons. And this is the Laird skiff, number 22. She would take 2 people. As you can see, the difference in the size of them there for a 2-man boat and up to 5 men. This boat here, this is actually my redundancy from Laird's boats. When they were closed in 1987, Eddie Laird gave me this boat. He said, which boat would you like Yonkers? And I said, I'll take number 7. And he laughed and he says, how did I know you were going to take that boat? This was the newest boat in the fleet at that stage. There, so yeah, I've had it ever since, 30 odd years now. I still regularly row. There, I've had the skiff in the last couple of years there, and the skiff, my normal row would be to Grace Point and back again, but I've taken it to Donegal and Hollywood as well. I've gone to Hollywood for a pint of Guinness and back again. We've rowed this boat to Port Patrick as well. Brian Mahard, myself and Kevin Baird rowed it to Port Patrick to raise money for the lifeboats. Bow, stern. This here is what you heard everybody talking about. This is a rollock. There, and the oars for doing the rowing with. That's what you, when we were small kids, 5, 6 years of age, this is all we could carry up to the hut there when the bigger boys were hauling the boats up. there, and we used to have bail them out with baked bean tins. There, stretcher block there, so you can adjust this for whatever size legs you are, from whatever height you are. There, so you put a 6-foot person in that, no problem there, you'll be able to row it okay there and stuff. The punt has two rowing positions. You can actually row at the front and the middle, so you have 2 sets of oars going in that there, with a couple at the back there, and you used to get some speed up in those. We did have racing competitions with the Caulfield Scouts there. Of course, we used to win all the time. The punt there also, one year we did rig up a sail for it with just a bed sheet there, and we used to row it out, and if the wind was blowing us back into the bay again, unfurl the sail and sail back in again, using another oar as a rudder. And so the Caulfield Scouts decided they would do it one day as well, so it ended up a Laird's punt against the Caulfield's punt in a race, and of course the Laird's punt won. Sorry, Caulfields.
There's very often a collection of kids just running around, a place like headless chickens, and really it was like kindergarten. Apart from Joe McKinstry, now he was Eddie's right-hand man. He was an employee of Eddie, and really nice guy. And he used to run, when Eddie wasn't there, Eddie would occasionally come down, but Eddie was more interested in the motorboat in the early days. He used to operate his motorboat, do the short sea trips. Either we went to Copeland Islands or out up to Rockport to see the seals. And Joe was the main man. He stood all day at the boats. He was out at the boats, took the money and that sort of thing.
Joe was a great character. He was the manager, and Joe was probably of a softer approach than the owners, Eddie Laird or Jimmy Laird. And Joe would have known how to get the best out of you without clipping you around the ear. And he was just one of those real big, dark man, always outdoors. And he just had a very slow demeanour, but knew how to extract the best out of it, all his scouts.
So I was assisting Joe, and then Joe left. So we did take another job, and so Eddie asked me would I fill in for Joe. So I went from scout to chief scout.
Big Joe was always worried in case Jimmy was about, "Oh, boys, come on in." No, come on in.
He's always telling us about our language, you know.
Oh, yeah. Keep it down, boys. I got a degree in swearing down there from Eddie Laird.
Typical days you go down, when Joe was there, he would be sitting in his wee sports car. He had this wee red sports car, and he'd be sitting there at 10 o'clock. I used to come down and sit with him for a half an hour and chat, and then we'd go and open the boat hut. There's 2 huts, one at the bottom of the stairs, where the top steps where he would shelter on his railing, and then the boat hut where they kept the oars and rowlocks over the other side of the racks where the boats were kept. So he was go down 10 o'clock, open up, and put the sign out for the short sea trips. If it was going to be short sea trips, or if it was going to be either to Copeland's or wherever Eddie was going to take the boat. and then we just wait for the customers to come along. And when they came, we'd haul the boats down from the place where they're stored into the water, and then we'd carry on till they're all out. And then if they're all out, and then obviously they come back in and out, so the beach could only hold so many. And at quiet times you went out and rowed out and took a cloud of them out and anchored them off in the bay, and then rowed back in, or swam back in if it was a nice day. You used to do that. And once they were all out, really it just took care of itself. There's a queue. So really, we were just there in case someone got in difficulties, or which was very often, really. So we'd have to go out and patrol, make sure everyone was safe.
I remember one day I was out with Jimmy Laird. I would have been about 13, and we were en route to Carrickfergus with a few passengers, and Jimmy was elderly, so he liked to go and have a sleep in the forecastle. So he's in the forecastle, and he says, "See that there, head for that there, that was Carrickfergus." So I'm steering away, and then I'm getting concerned because I see this ship coming, and and what do you do here? And then I shout in to Jimmy, and I says, "Jimmy!" And then Jimmy doesn't answer me, and then a few more Jimmys later, "Jimmy, what? And I says, "There's a ship heading for us." "Well, don't hit it." And then he went back to sleep.
So there's people who'd never been on a boat before in their lives. They actually sat the wrong way around on the seat. Yeah. And then he would say, no, turn round. And you don't see where you're going, you see where you've been.
But people always enjoyed it. It was taking people out of their comfort zone quite often, but always enjoyment. Just people coming back in and thanking you very much, and a lot of repeat customers coming back for more. Yeah.
Right, where we are now is where Laird's jetty used to be, and if you actually look down there, and I know it doesn't look like much, but that's some of the small stanchions that held the jetty in place, and that's there. The children would have come down, and the customers and everybody else would have come down the steps. These are not the original steps, but the steps down to the rowboats was here, and the customers and the scouts and everybody else would have come down, and also the people that wanting to go out on a motorboat. And the only thing that really you can see left is there's still some whitewash on the wall, and all the old photographs you can see the whitewash where it says Laird's Boats. So you can see some bits of whitewash there too. That was done every year to make it nice and bright. It hasn't been done now for nearly 40 years for argument's sake. And the wreck would have been there. And the only thing you can identify still is there's the wee mission site there. And that's been there for so long. And first thing in the morning, somebody came down these steps to hire out a boat. Two scouts would have got a rowboat. They would have lifted it and trailed it with the bow behind them on the sand. Now they came along here, and just about there was a little bit of concrete, and that concrete gave a rumble, and the local boatmen over at the pier could hear that rumble. It was like an echo came right round the bay, and the local boatmen used to say, "Oh, the rumble off the Gold Coast." They could hear the boats getting launched and how many was going out. And then after the rumble, it was very short. Then it went on to sand, and then and the boat was launched. And then the people walked down the jetty, jumped into the boat, and away they went.
customers came and said a boat for two. Boat for two was a skiff. A punt took a family of 5. So they would queue up and you would just sort of, and then somebody would have a book and take number 21 an hour. And then if it wasn't back in an hour, somebody went looking for it, you know, so. And then in between our duties were, you know, people would drop oars and they'd be down to 1 oar, so you'd always be on the move round the bay looking for people, getting their oars and stuff like that, you know, so. And then in between that, you know, we would sort of, one of our bright ideas was to convert a punt into a sailing boat when Willie Caulfield was on holiday. So we put an oar up, but we didn't realise you had to have a keel on a boat. So when the wind caught it, we nearly capsized, you know, so that was introduction to sort of what a yacht would do, you know, so. The other thing was people would have hired them and maybe rowed to Grimsport instead of getting the bus home and left them there. So you'd have been looking for boats, maybe. Some were as far away as Carrickfergus when you think about that, you know.
There was great skills with the motorboat drivers, because if a rowboat was late, and sometimes they were missing all night and nobody worried, and if a rowboat was late, you would assume that somebody has dumped it along the coast. So the motorboat would have been out hopefully before dark, and they would have maybe spotted the rowboat. They knew how to look, because you had to look at rocks that way and then come along and maybe look at rocks that way, because it was crevices. If you looked straight, you mightn't see anything, so you had to keep looking that way to see if there's a rowboat, and that way, because you'd see it not there at all, but when you look back you would see it. So if the rowboat was spotted, one of the scouts would be told to get up onto the bow, and they would have knew exactly to go around seaweed and rocks and whatever and land at a certain spot. This is a skill lost, because nobody now would know how to do this. Then he would have put the nose of the boat right in. The scout would have jumped onto the rock, and if the scout fell, they were called an idiot. And then the scout would have went and picked the rowboat up and then rowed it out to the motorboat, and then they would have towed it back to Bangor. So that's a skill lost as well, you wouldn't even think about.
I remember one occasion having to go with Eddie to Hollywood, because every now and again the police or someone would come alongside, like it wasn't one of your boats being abandoned, or normally it'd be around Jenny Watts Cave or Brompton or Strickland's Glen or occasionally Crawfordsburn, but this one time was actually Hollywood. So I went with Eddie and Eddie's nephew, who had come over from Canada. And he's a couple of years older than me, and he's a big boy. He played ice hockey. He's a big man, a big boy. And so we towed a boat behind the motorboat, and Eddie brought us up to Kinniger, and then we got on the boat and rowed over where Eddie's boat was. And I had to haul it up and tip it out, bail it out, and get it back in the water. So, and then tie it onto our boat and start rowing back to Bangor. So, which I did, being the top rower, you know. I started rowing, and I thought he might have given me a break. He said he did, but he didn't. It didn't. Not a word. So I was rowing, and I can't remember. It was a couple of hours, I'm sure, rowing. And when we came along past Picky Pool, he said, "Morris, do you want a break?" So it was like 100 meters to go to get. I said, "No thanks, that's right." But the electric shocks were going up and down my forearms. I could feel the electric shocks. I had never felt that before, but. So that was the furthest I had to go and get a boat. But that was for one of your duties you had to do as a scout.
My first year at Laird's there, I loved it. It was a nice wee job to have. I ended up going out with the motorboat and working on the motorboat for quite a bit of time as well. So, and then you would come back in the evening and then help haul up the rowboats. Yeah, I had the best of both worlds really, the motorboat and the rowboat.
Then I ended up on the motorboat as well. There were two motorboats at that time. There was Laird's big boat, Alice of 7, that was licensed for 68 passengers. And Jimmy Laird had to make the boats very shallow because he was coming right into the jetty in shallow water. And then Jimmy Laird himself, he was a powerful age. So I would have been helping Jimmy, say when he was 82, 83, and I would have been helping him.
The motorboats used to go run as part of that whole business. They did it on short sea trips, and very occasionally, if Brian wasn't available, I would have got picked for that, and that was something to look forward to, because Jimmy, gruff as he looked, was an old gentleman, always in the same dungarees from I ever remember. Jimmy would have slipped you a threepenny bit at the end of a good trip. And that was like a bonus. Come the end of the day, all the boats were hauled up. If you thought hauling them down was hard, nowhere near as bad as hauling them up. And we're taking 4 or 6 years to lift a punt up off the beach, up the slip, and up onto the racks. And you maybe had, I can't remember exactly how many boats would have been down there, but at the height of the summer there would have been probably 40 rowing boats in total. So it was a lot of hauling to be done. But that's when everybody appeared, because that's when the pay was being released.
We had nothing in those days, but we were happy with the nothing we had. We used to go to Greasy Joe's at the corner of Somerset Avenue and Grace Hill. There's a great wee chippy. And you got your fish supper and a bottle of orange.
Reflecting now, it was like a base camp for future years to come. It was like being, it might sound a bit silly that, but to me it was like a base camp, and this is where you learnt your springboard to go into adulthood. It was fantastic.
You know, you work for pennies, really. On a good day, really good day, you get £1. Whoa.
That was big dough. I think only got £1 once.
Yeah, not often.
Lots of things that sort of come back to you from time to time. I can remember a family capsizing. The bigger scouts on a bad day would have taken a rowing boat and purposely got into the surf and surfed down the crest of a wave down onto the beach. And they knew how to get the boat, keep the boat in a straight line in the surf, and knew exactly when to put a wee bit of rudder in to turn and fall back off the back of the wave to go out for another one. I can remember a family coming in, and they were just rowing back in. They obviously had the boat out for the hour, and they got caught on the surf, and the whole family ended up on the beach.
I remember going for midnight rows after we'd pulled all the boats up, which is another story. When we got them all up, we'd lunch one each and go round to Crawford's Burn for a barbecue. Got driftwood and sausages and stuff. But up above us on the hill was the Girl Guides camp. Have a look at that. Well, like we're mid-teens, and we went up and took all the tent pegs out in the squeals of those girls when the tents came down. And then the brown owl or something, she came down and was murder all around her.
There was one time the motorboat was at a jetty, and somebody fell into the water, and it was screaming and Jimmy Laird was going, "Stand up! Stand up!" Oh, somebody got to stand up, and the guy stood up. Water was about there on him, you know.
wasn't all happy. There were sad times too. And I remember well, sometimes the people hired a boat out and they went over time, would abandon the boat rather than pay you the extra money. So I went out to retrieve this punt, rowed out. There's a guy lying on the bottom of it. He cut his 2 wrists. What a mess. And I towed it in. With no mobile phones, you couldn't. Got in and they got an ambulance there. He survived, but I never found out why he did it or anything about it. Don't even know his name. But I'll tell you this, I'm not afraid of dying. It's just that you're so stiff the next day.
Yeah.
It was all good spirited. Everyone was here because they loved it. Everyone was enjoying it, and I've friendships to this day that I made back then when I was a wee boy on the slipways. So some friendships even from the other side. The rivalry's still here, 30 years on.
It's amazing when you think back to those days of no life jackets, you know, no tuition. Just give us your 2 bob. There's the boat. Come back in an hour. And there was nobody standing with a loud hailer to say boat number 6 come in. You know, it was all done on a trust basis. I don't ever remember anybody ever being lost off a rowing boat. Today, these things wouldn't happen. They were great memories. And the older you get, sometimes the fresher these memories are. You can't remember what you did 5 minutes ago, but I can remember what I used to do 60 years ago.
Hey! Man, put it at a 45-degree angle. Right, there's a good one. There's a pole coming out of James's head. That's a good one, that one there. You don't you in like mad there, James. Oh, look, I get the picture of me. Look, there's a good one there. Right.
It's a pretty the other boat.
Wait for 6 hours for the tide to go out.
We'll sit where it used to be. What time do we get paid? I came down on the very day they were filling the rowboats in. They were filling everything in here, and it was quite emotional to see the lorries that were coming this way here and filling in, and it was quite emotional. So I said, right, I stood and watched it for just a few minutes, and I said, right, I'm going to go home and I'm going to write a poem, and it may not be the best poem ever written, but it was written on the day that the rowboats ended. So I think it's the only one. It started off as Lennigan's boats. Sure, it was a right long time ago. But now it is time for change again. They say it is for the best, you know. Jimmy Laird took the stand and plied the boats for hire, 42 skiffs and punts, Alice the 7, a real high flyer. The scouts came down at an early age, each summer was the same. They grew up with their friends, when young they thought your life is a game. But now the rumble of the Gold Coast shall fall upon deaf ears. No more haul-ups or pull-downs, just a memory in a couple of years. Soon words like scouts will be confused, for scouts no more shall be. A different era, a different way. More civilized, the planner says he. But memories will remain, if only for a while. For time shall come and time will go until our funeral day. Soon schools will study local history. They'll read a few words on a page. Hire boats? Whereabouts, I'll say. Ah, sure, it'll be a different age.